This podcast is brought to you by Adelaide. Media verification and measurement are undergoing major disruption. Legacy players are pivoting to performance advertising, AI is reshaping brand safety, and attention is replacing viewability. Adelaide is leading this shift with AU, a new way to assess media quality that scores placements based on their potential to drive attention and outcomes before your ads run. Think of it like a credit score for media. Finally, a clear view of quality before you buy. Take the guesswork out of your investment strategy and try Adelaide AU on your next campaign. This podcast is brought to you by AudioHook, the leading independent audio DSP. AudioHook has direct publisher integrations into all major podcast and streaming radio platforms, providing 40% more inventory than what could be accessed in omnichannel DSPs. What's more, AudioBook has full transcripts on more than 90% of all podcast inventory, enabling advanced contextual targeting and brand suitability. AudioHook is so confident that in addition to CPM buys, they offer the industry's only pay-for-performance option where brands can scale audio and podcasting with peace of mind knowing they are only paying for outcomes. Visit audiohook.com to learn more. That's audiohook.com. All right, welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I'm Ari Paparo, joined by Eric Franchi, and our guest today is Jenny Wall, the CMO of VideoAmp, a longtime executive in the TV world for Nickelodeon, Hulu, Netflix, etc. And she'll be talking about VideoAmp, currencies, and a lot of other interesting stuff. Eric, are you getting sick of us talking about currencies, or is this your jam?
No, I'm not sick. I think it's super important. Jenny is great. So either way, if we were sick of it, I think just having Jenny on to talk to us and talk about this stuff with us will be awesome. And I can't wait to ask her about a legend in the TV space that she was in the room for.
Yeah, I am excited about that as well. I didn't know that going in. And we have a lot of news this week. We have defamation lawsuits. We have retail media. We have more AI than we can deal with. So a lot of good stuff. We have some news this week. So Marketecture, on its march to total world dominance, has acquired more stuff. So many people on this who listen to this pod may know David Berkowitz. He's been a longtime marketer in the space, did a stint at Mediation, among other places. He sold us two communities he had developed, one called serialmarketers.com. That's serial like serial killers, not cereal like the breakfast cereal. So serialmarketers.net is the website, and that is where you can be around other professional marketers with an amazing Slack channel where everyone helps each other and learns. And the second one is called AImarketersguild.com. We call it AIMG, and that is also a different Slack channel and weekly webinars that help marketers get their hands around AI, learn things, meet each other, and cooperate. So these two amazing communities that will, for the most part, remain, unmonetized, but they're great to have. Smart brains as part of the Marketecture world, and David serving as our chief community officer. So I'm excited about that. Eric, do you know David?
I've met him over the years, yeah. And congrats on two more acquisitions. This is amazing. My question for you is an ad tech VC allowed in the marketer-only Slack community?
No. Simple answer. It's for marketers. If you have a marketing title, if you're a VP of marketing, then you get in. If you're an investor, a tech person, a product person, then you can't get in. It's simple. That's what it is. But that's why we have the AdTech God community. So if those of you who do not know, AdTech God has this thriving Slack community you can join. Just go to adtechgod.com and there's a application form to join that community. And that is really everyone from the community is allowed in, and we have different channels for different topics. So I'd recommend that. All right, enough promo. Let's dive in with Jenny Wall from VideoAmp. All right, welcome Jenny Wall to the podcast, the CMO of VideoAmp. Jenny, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ari and Eric. Thanks for having me.
So VideoAmp is one of our favorite companies. It is always interesting to cover. It's always got something going on. So let's just start with what is VideoAmp now and how's it doing?
We're doing great, actually. We have a ton of momentum. I think you can see that in the upfronts as well, how everything's changing and moving at a very innovative pace. I will say that we are a tech first, and I think that's really, really important. We started out in big data 10 years ago. We're a tech first company that helps agencies, brands, and publishers to effectively engage with actually the right audience in order to maximize results.
The company has had a measurement side and a media side. So what's the current state?
The current state is we are almost 100% on the moved into the measurement space. I think we started out providing media as well, and that was really for those that did not have a media agency and wanted to actually look at measurement. And so it was more of media funded measurement. And so that has changed over the years. And our focus really is not to be a DSP. Our focus is, and we still have a few of those clients because that's what they ask for, but our focus really is being a measurement company. And that is where everything has shifted over the last, I would say, year and a half.
Yeah, the strategy always seemed to be to use the media side to jumpstart the measurement side. You know, obviously media produces revenue. And then over time, the measurement side would be dominant. And it sounds like you're on your way to that transition.
I would say we're well beyond almost that way to make that transition. And like I said, it's just for those clients that actually need that as a service. So we like to obviously be client first. And if our clients need that, and we're pretty agnostic with that. So it's not like we're grading our own homework in those cases.
Why do you choose to join VideoAmp? You've been there a couple of years, and you were formerly the CMO of Nickelodeon, and you're at Hulu, Netflix. So you went from the publisher side to the measurement side. What was the thinking?
I'll try to give you the easiest answer, the shortest answer. One is Peter Liguori, who's our executive chairman, was my boss in the 90s. He's a marketer at heart. So in the 90s, when I was at HBO, he was my boss. We have very similar philosophies, and he's been part of the measurement change, whether that's C3, C7, whether that's looking at FX, bringing the age demo to 18 to 49. He's been at the forefront of this, and we both have had a desire, I would say, over the last 30 years to have some other option other than the legacy media and monopoly, and having one thing that is supposed to be the source of truth when we don't even know if that's right. So when Peter called me after I left Nickelodeon, so like you said, I've been on the buying side, if you will, from a marketer and brand side of it for 30 years, starting at HBO. I've been at Hulu. I ran creative at Netflix back in the day in 2012 before it actually even took off, which was exciting time to be there. I actually went to Gimlet, became CMO so I could learn the ear and understand sort of the value of the ear, and learned a lot there in producing podcasts. So, because I was doing that for advertisers because nobody else wanted to do it there because they were journalists.
The value of the ear. That's the value of the title of this episode.
Which is quite grand, I think. And I would always say to some of my friends, like, why do you leave your audience when they leave the couch? Why don't you go with them in the car? So let's make some companion podcasts. And I can say that I was definitely instrumental, I think, in some of those companion podcasts of trying to keep people engaged over time. And then I went to Nickelodeon because I really actually thought that I could help people that had been there, many, many years, help them into the streaming era. I will say that was harder than I imagined. But then when this came up, I really, really, again, maybe this isn't my last rodeo, but from a legacy perspective, I'm in my 50s. I actually have a career of always being at a disruptor, and I absolutely love challenges. I love the David versus Goliath. I believe there should be a multi-currency world. I believe there should be options. I believe that big data is the right way to look moving forward. And I believe, again, that publishers and advertisers should have an option of what to look at in regards to data to make the best decisions. And what that does is, when you have a monopoly, you don't have price flexibility, you don't have innovation. And so we have put everything into actually on the playing field to actually create an option for everyone to hopefully save the industry some money, but also get better results. And, our numbers show significantly higher audiences. And that's good for both from a publisher perspective, but also from an advertiser perspective. It's higher audiences, but more addressable audiences. So you really have to pay less to reach the people that you want to reach. And I just think this is something that I think the industry needs to embrace. And I think the industry needs to embrace it for themselves, but also just our future.
So I want to go into the whole currency wars. I mean, I think that's the meat of our conversation. But before I do, I want to know that when you were at Nickelodeon, were you ever slimed?
I was never slimed, except for when I went to the Riviera Maya Nickelodeon Resort, and I was slimed there. So I was not slimed.
Oh, that was on your free time. You left work, a bus driver's holiday. You leave Nickelodeon for vacation, and you get slimed.
And I get slimed. But yes, I was slimed.
Maybe even more of an epic story, Jenny, and we don't have to spend time on this, but just doing a little diligence on you, I noted that you were on the team that came up with the tagline, "It's not TV, it's HBO."
I was, but I was a young pup back then, and Peter was my boss. And you know what I love about Peter Ligori is he still says, we're 10 years apart. He's in his 60s. I'm in my 50s. But he still says when we go to meetings, Jenny and I came up with the tagline. And I love that, I was part of the team. That's why I put it that way in my resume, because I didn't come up with it. But that's what I love about a boss over the years. And I really, really respect. But that was an incredible time to be there. When you first heard it, you were like, well, that's just so simple. But you're like, but it really says what it is. You can actually swear on television. There's no commercials. There's more sex. And it is a completely like almost creator-driven area, whether that's Sex and the City, Sopranos. So it was incredible to be at HBO at that time for 8 years.
Do you have any comment on the rebrand, Max?
Oh, I have a lot of comments. I can't believe both Peter and I could not believe, as like legacy employees of HBO and the value of that brand, I could not believe they dropped HBO in the first place. And then also, I don't think a lot of people point this out, they chose not just a random name of Max, they chose the end of the sister network that used to be known as Skinamax in the 90s. And I just was like, I think that's insane. So I actually just had a great chuckle. And I know like Eric Pallotta over there, who I worked with at Netflix, he runs social. And I think he did a pretty self-deprecating job of acknowledging that we know how crazy this is. And I think it's going to go down as like the new Coke.
Yeah, I think also one of the reasons they gave was because the research showed that HBO was too associated with like nudity and violence and things. But then to choose Max makes no sense.
No sense. You might as well choose like Bob.
Bob, the best operating system Microsoft ever created.
Yes.
All right, let's talk currencies. So I'll give my narrative, which is, and as a straw man you can knock down, which is, obviously, Nielsen has a monopoly and has had a monopoly on television measurement for, since the dawn of television. Yeah. Is it 100? No, it's not 100. They should have the 100th anniversary of the monopoly. And over the past, 10 years, there have been various efforts to create not direct competitors, but like secondary currencies, alternative currencies. And then slowly but surely, it's been kind of like a street fight to try to get individual broadcasters or individual advertisers and agencies to adopt these secondary currencies. And we're now at the point where it's a mixed system. Tell me if I'm wrong or if that's an accurate kind of narrative.
No, I think it's accurate. I mean, I think the industry is moving, slower than it should be. I think we have every single publisher but one and every single holding company doing business with us. So everybody is giving us a piece of their business, and a lot of that is advanced audiences. But I do want to knock down maybe something that's not true, and that is 50% of our work still is in demos. So I think that some people think that people use Nielsen for demos and us for advanced audiences. Obviously, we are the king in advanced audiences because of our big data approach, but we also do demos quite well. So we have a 3-year deal with Paramount. We have a multi-year deal with Netflix. We do with Amazon. We do with NBCU. We have deals with every single person for the next 3 years in order to incorporate our measurement into their systems. And also we've gotten ourselves into the planning tools, which makes it much easier for agencies to have like a one-stop shop to actually plan across, not just linear, but digital and social. So it is a multi-currency world, and it should be. Yeah,
I just want to clarify, just to make it obvious. What are the most common use cases of what you call advanced audiences?
So an advanced audience is beyond age demo. So I don't really understand why people are still buying age demo. I know that, you've got people like Hershey that, is like, I just want to reach everyone with a mouth. Okay, you can buy age demo, and I'm not saying you shouldn't buy age demo, but if you are looking for someone that's going to buy a car or a razor, why on earth would you waste your dollars on someone that is not intent on buying a car or buying a razor? Why would I give someone with a beard a razor ad? And so advanced audiences really is just breaking it down, because we have the identity and the data and a privacy safe compliant to reach audiences that actually have higher intent for your product. And what that does is it reduces frequency, which saves you money, and it actually increases outcomes.
And then the advanced audiences, are they applied to at the program level, the channel level, or the impression level?
I think it's at every single one of those, because they're different. Like, still for some of the streamers, you can't hit a program level. Mm-hmm. So it's different across, and we're actually nimble enough to figure out how to do that with our publishers, with what their limitations or non-limitations are.
So it could be, let's say, just to give an example, it could be like Peacock in a genre of sports is one targeting node, whereas it might be something much more granular in another targeting node.
Yeah, we could go into sports and then say, but in the sports, I want females between 18 to 24 that actually, are, into music, into cats.
Yeah.
You can get that deep. I also think just, to note is that, with streamers, and again, I spend a lot of time there, and we spend a lot of time with Amazon, we're going from finite pods to infinite pods. And so, why would you run the same ad when you have infinite pods and you can actually address or addressable target audience or advanced audiences and not waste your money? And so, I don't want to quote this for Amazon, but what I've heard is about 40% is going to be addressable. And then that's just going to be coming up much higher. And I don't know if you went to Netflix Upfront, but their plethora of data and just proving why it's successful and why their actual targeting creates higher outcomes is sort of what the future should be.
Right. So in the environment of a Netflix, where they have very rich data to target on, what's the interaction of a currency provider with that media planning and execution?
We're deeply embedded in working with the agency in regards to buying and what to buy. I would say either from, again, like a program level, or when you get deep into the integration levels. Look at who would have thought you could put Squid Games with Domino's? So it's bringing some of those brands together with the opportunities internal, and that could be everything from just a regular buy on the Christmas games, or we do exclusively the measurement and currency for Raw. So we work in myriad ways in that sense, just sort of how, again, our publishers and our brands would like us to work with them.
And do brands choose whether to use you on a campaign by campaign basis based on their goals? Or is it that some brands are always on and really prefer your solution and other brands are content with Nielsen or whomever?
I still think it's a mix. Like Subway we had on at our Vamp front. And I think what they're seeing is when they use us for a particular campaign, they're seeing different results. So they're seeing results like a lower CPM, a higher reach to intended audiences, and higher outcomes. And I think when you start to see that, you're going to see shift to more, my hope is that it's not just a campaign anymore. It's going to be I'm not saying Nielsen's going to go away, because I still think there needs to be an option. But especially if you're hitting advanced audiences and you want to go into some of these digital players and you want to measure your cross-platform all the way from brand all the way to performance. And I have a whole thing I'd love to talk to you about brand versus performance and mid-funnel. But it really is, I know cross-channel is like a buzzword, but it really is important to understand, how did I drive that outcome? And that is going to be the biggest thing moving forward is, in this kind of financial crisis we're in and budgets being cut, marketers are going to need to look like revenue generators versus cost centers. And they're going to need to prove that what I did actually turned into sales. So the more data that you have on that, and for the less money that you can do, it's going to be really important. So,
but I'm trying to understand this a little bit in terms of if you think of it as two waves coming from opposite sides, the traditional sort of TV currency approach, which is independent measurement and, very broad coverage, versus the outcomes-based digital first folks like the TV Scientifics of the world, where they have their own methodology and their own platform for measuring outcomes. Does it segment that way? Or is there a role for a currency provider like VideoAmp when you're measuring, digital click-based outcomes and conversions that might be measured in a more deterministic way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is deterministic, especially when we're looking at zero-party data and first-party data. And, all those other providers, again, I think are great because they push everyone for innovation. And it's, not to say that we tell, a lot of our brands, like, yeah, keep your MMM, keep some of the stuff that you have, but we are another layer on top of that. It helps you connect the dots. And I think that's the biggest piece, is connecting the dots between all of your media. Whereas a lot of these providers might just do mid-funnel or last click. And, I have kind of a joke of when I was at Hulu running media there, and I used to get told, just buy more search because it's only a $7 CAC. And I said, well, it's really not a $7 CAC because that's last click. It's really a $30 CAC because what I had to do is to create that demand to collect it. So you can't just go buy at the bottom of the funnel if you don't create top and mid. It almost boils my blood when I hear people separating performance and brand, or just saying I'm a mid-funnel provider. I think, we provide top of the funnel, we provide mid-funnel. We just released I don't know if you saw it yesterday, a partnership with Captify, and that is mid-funnel search. So that's intent. And so we now can get all the way through that funnel and provide it as more of a one-stop shop. So I think people are realizing that, yes, you can layer us on top for better insights, because I think the more insights, the better, to be honest. I mean, an MMM is backwards looking, but it's not bad to have, to figure out what does that say versus what does VideoAmp say, and then how do I optimize my media based on that.
So you just came from many of the upfronts, I imagine. What was the general vibe? I mean, I don't get invited to these things.
Well, maybe you're lucky, because
I went to Yahoo's. That was not like the most exciting one.
I did not go to Yahoo's. I mean, I'll just
Thanks
say,
Yahoo for the invite. Just
and thanks Yahoo for working with us. We have a great partnership with them. And Josh Line just became their CMO, a dear friend of mine. So you should get him on this podcast. I mean, obviously it's sports. It's like trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I differentiate myself if every single person is mentioning the NFL? So I think that's one thing that came out loud and clear. I think the need for transparency, marketers are asking for transparency. So I think there was a lot of talk about ad tech. Who did it best was by far Netflix. I mean, not just because I worked there. I also just want to give a shout out to the three badass women that were on stage. The only Netflix actually spokespeople were three badass women. Mary and Amy and Bella. I think they're incredible. So they just killed it, but they backed themselves up with data. So I would say that's the one thing I felt was lacking a little bit, was actually performance of, like, we have this audience and we know that this audience, converts at 2.1% of something else. So it was very data-based. So I would say, yeah, definitely sports, live. And then really just everybody selling their cross-platform, which I think is extremely smart. I just had a great call with Paramount and, Mike Benson over at CBS. And then you've got Amy Campbell, and you got Dom DeMeglio, who's doing Paramount Plus. And then you have like Alyssa running some Pluto. It's like, how do you keep people in that flywheel? Because it's, you need to keep people within your system and move them through it. And how do you use that data to figure out, did I move somebody from Pluto to Paramount Plus? Did Yellowstone air on Paramount TV and then Paramount Plus, and actually really understand that? So I think a lot of this, what's the old school term of tune-in marketing is something that we have increased our, I would say, involvement in drastically to help show people through that flywheel as to what is actually driving conversion and retention, and to make better decisions. Because I mean, when you look at it, like, again, I'll just use Netflix. Netflix has a $3 billion cap on it. If you add all of the big players like, Disney and Paramount and NBCU, et cetera, they combined don't even equal 3 billion. So they're in a fight, and their fight needs to be, I need to use better data more efficiently, and I need to connect with the right audiences. And that's just another piece I want to throw out, is when I say sort of like we work so everybody wins, meaning publishers, advertisers, and brands, I also think the consumer wins. I mean, CTV is a mess these days. Like you get the same ad over and over again because of frequency caps. And again, people just doing reach and frequency. And they're like, well, I reached them 20 times. I'm like, well, that's actually brand damaging. Like I would say,
Sure.
like, I hate you now. Or I already bought that thing 3 days ago. So I think between digital and CTV and some of the programmatic spaces with the fraud going on, but also just people still, which I don't understand, are looking at reach and frequency. And why is reach and frequency something that shows how somebody's going to act at the end? And why wouldn't you use, whether it's VideoAmp or someone else, why wouldn't you use different signals to tell you that you're pissing people off, or they've already bought your product, so upsell them, or listen, they're a loyal customer and I need to engage them in something else. That was with Hulu. Like a lot of the money went with retention and a lot of people just put it in acquisition. And I'm like, well, it's a lot cheaper to keep somebody than it is to go get somebody new. And if churn, even when I was at HBO, churn was 50%. And you're looking at now it's about 70% in some of the ad tiers, which is normal because of serial churners. But just think about that. If you actually spent just a little bit of money to go out and try to say, I'm going to, with our data that we have, I know you watched Handmaid's Tale and Handmaid's Tale 2 is coming out and you haven't been on the service for 2 months. Why wouldn't I reach out to that person, a privacy compliant way, of course, and let them know about it because they have so many choices. So retention, I think, is a big piece that is sometimes overlooked, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like they just use pricing as a retention vehicle. They don't try anything creative or involved.
I did, though. So
yeah. Oh, well, okay. Well, you were a part of It's Not TV, so right. We know that. All right, let's call it there. That was a super interesting conversation. This podcast has talked about currencies probably more than our audience wants to hear, but this was probably the best one. We will take a break, and we'll be right back with the refresh.
A word from our sponsors. Headed to Cannes? So are we. With the addition of Audigent, Experian is now your end-to-end solution for data-driven advertising, helping you understand your customers, reach them across channels, and measure what matters. The result? More relevant experiences for consumers, more revenue opportunities for publishers, and better performance for brands. Book a meeting with our team at Experian.com/Cannes. That's Experian.com/CANNES.
All right, we are back with the refresh, the news of the week, everybody. And it's been a big week for news. We're not going to be able to get into all of this stuff, but what we definitely want to cover up front is number one, DoubleVerify is suing Analytics. Breaking news from last week, but we got to talk about it. A couple of big pieces of retail media news. And then, as always, feels like the world just advanced this week with AI. And we'll get a couple other things if we have some time. So at the top of the docket, DoubleVerify is suing Analytics for defamation. This is centered around the bot traffic report that Analytics came out with about 2 months ago. DV is saying that this report falsely claims that its systems don't block bot traffic, misleadingly suggesting advertisers are regularly billed for invalid impressions, and it alleges the claim harms its reputation and was made to promote Analytics' for-profit services. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Defamation.
Yeah, defamation's bad. I would just say that we're at the center of this because we've had both Christoph and Mark Zagorski on this podcast almost consecutively. There was only a couple weeks separate. And Christoph said, I have to do it this way because if I tell people that I found something, they're going to cover it up. And then Mark said, well, you can't just blindside us and say things about us without checking. So I see both sides of this, and it's a very aggressive legal tactic to sue for defamation. We'll see.
But it's a serious claim. The claim is that they're, harming DV's business with going to market with these claims. So I kind of get where DV is coming from. Is there any precedence for this? Have we ever seen, there's been a bunch of obviously lawsuits over time, but something of this nature play out? And this is a question for both of you since we've all been doing this for a long time.
It doesn't ring a bell of someone getting sued for defamation.
Yeah, I can't think of anything in this space for defamation. I mean, absolutely for false claims.
I think one of the interesting little nuance here is, in my opinion, this report of Analytics was probably the least important or impactful report that Analytics has put out. And even in the article in Adweek about this, they talk about the other report about the CSAM, which is much more important. And that one went through and everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's bad. But here, this one was just this report that is the subject of the lawsuit was about bots that are declared, meaning the good bots. And Analytics claim that DV was not blocking those, which is, I don't know. It seems interesting.
Well, what's a good bot?
Like a search crawler.
Search crawler.
A bot that is self-declared properly. So it doesn't seem like a critical issue to me. I mean, if it were true that DV was counting those impressions and not marking them as bots, that's not great. But this is not the end of the world kind of revelation.
No, but what I do want to get some elevation on that to say that, this isn't about either company, but what this could help is really push the conversation of what is fraudulent in regards to digital. So, I mean, there are some reports, like I said, that are like 40% is actually fraudulent. And I think that if we can get down to helping that situation from an efficiency perspective, it would be helpful if we get like elevation on the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's always been this difficult problem of figuring out not just fraudulent, but just non-human.
Well, even like also remember the below the fold issue and all of those back in the day.
Sure. And so like ads.txt and which, by the way, was also in the news this week, ads.txt and viewability and, they've all been chipping away at the problem, but the problem still exists.
Okay. Let me give one perspective here. The CSAM stuff was horrible, should never happen. Like ads should never be served on those sites.
Yeah.
What the bot report is claiming is that DV is not blocking bot traffic and billing advertisers for it. We don't know what that percentage is. I mean, Jenny just said, right, there's like 40% if we think about the kind of like TAM of fraud, to use a bad term. And to your point, Ari, there is a good percentage of that that's just non-human and non-human in some ways for good, right?
Yeah.
Like, crawlers and everything like that. I think the allegation here is that advertisers are being billed for some percentage and a small percentage of traffic that they shouldn't be billed for. And then if I was DV, like I would say, yeah, you're harming my business.
Well, yeah, but we don't know I don't think Analytics knows what actually was happening. All they could know is that there was a DV tag and it was a bot. They don't know if the DV tag was set to block, which would be a setting the customer would choose. We also don't know what the relationship between the advertiser and the publisher would be with regard to clawbacks on bots. So I think that this might be an example where Analytics got a little ahead of its skis in terms of implicating what was happening when all it could observe was the fact that a DV tag was serving an ad to a bot. It's complicated, I guess, is where we end up.
Yeah, super complicated. Ironically, Mark Zagorski had an ad exchanger interview. It sounds like they set up the interview prior to this news dropping, and while he couldn't comment on anything related to this or other lawsuits, he did drop a pretty cold line as it relates to just like being in his business, and it's no one roots for the referee, which I felt was like pretty apropos of the position that DV is in.
And DV released a press release. They just emailed it to me this week, claiming they found this giant fraud where spammy sites were copying the ads.txt from good sites. And that's just not a important claim, to be honest. That's just because you can I could copy the ads.txt from the New York Times and put it on aripaparo.com tomorrow. Who cares? If I can't sell ads using those IDs, it doesn't matter. I feel like that was not a good faith little expose that they put out today. But I'm sure I'll hear from Chris about that.
Chris H.
Chris H. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Ari's DMs are open. Okay, let's move on. A couple of big pieces of RMN news, maybe one piece of news and one piece to keep an eye on. So Walmart had their earnings last week, and they dropped something very interesting. Basically, post-Vizio, their advertising business is up 50% year over year. So Vizio made real contribution to the ads business such that it was 27% year over year without it. And the entire Walmart Connect business was up 31% year over year. So business is growing very nicely, but, as expected, injecting some CTV into it really had a meaningful effect.
I want to hear Jenny's point of view on this. Is what's going on here? What's your perspective on this?
Well, one, I just have to disclose that we have a long-term partnership with Vizio, which I think shows, just from a set-top box perspective, I think how valuable that data is. So I would say Walmart did an incredible thing with that, and we're very happy to continue to be part of that, I think, stack, if you will. So it just shows you, I think, when you bring in something like a set-top box, and again, or, I think it's interesting Roku didn't show up at the upfront, but I think it was an incredible move to bring in that piece. And so I believe every part of that, it's up 50%. And I also think retail media itself is an incredible place to be, and is going to be the theme for this year in regards to everyone from a PayPal to like, I was talking to Mondelez the other day, and it's amazing what the CPMs are going up 40%, like on an Amazon or a Walmart. They are going up 40%, but also when you go to a Walmart search cookies, I would say there's 9 sponsored ads before you even get to organic. And then when you get to organic, it's Walmart brands. So everyone's having to pay to play. And so as they continue to go up, this space is going to become really competitive because people know that that's right at the bottom of the funnel. If I'm searching for cookies, I want to be there as Mondelez with my Oreos. So it's going to be a really competitive world. And like I said, CPMs are going up 40% year over year. So people are going to have to be smart where they put their money. And I think that more data, like Vizio data, et cetera, is only going to help those RMNs.
Yes. And those 40% year-over-year increases on CPMs are what's driving a lot of these businesses to be super, super profitable. So this is the other thing that was eye-opening. Walmart's advertising and membership offerings, so you can join like the online version of a Sam's Club or Walmart, make up a quarter of the company's profits.
Retailing's not the best business, but advertising's great.
Retail media sure is. And that's why ads are coming to Airbnb. Sometime.
Sure. Why not?
No time soon. Maybe, but sometime. So I saw a Bloomberg TV reporter who has almost no followings, but I'll give credit to the X algo. It made it into my feed, saying something about advertising is inevitable. Brian Chesky. I was like, what's going on? He gave an interview on Bloomberg TV. It's good. We'll link to it in the newsletter because they had a big expansion in their services. Now it is no longer you can book a place to stay. You can book services.
Sure.
So like a spa or a chef or anything like that.
Or what about a Barbie house?
Yeah, the Barbie house, the specialty houses.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Yeah. So basically the idea is they want to be Amazon for services. And then the journalist said, hey, since Uber launched their advertising business, now $1.5 billion run rate, they've gotten a lot of love from the street and it's super profitable. And I saw the clip. It's literally like 2 seconds. You could find it. Brian says advertising is a huge opportunity. It is inevitable, but he really wants to nail services first. So I don't know what the over-under is on when it comes, but it will be coming. It'll be interesting to see who they hire to run this.
Yeah, well, the thing is that you get, like I say, a $10 CPM, but then you also have to put your creatives in the dishwasher before you leave.
I think they need to they're probably like Instacart and things like that is incredible partnerships they should be doing.
One of the things about Uber's business that's important to realize, their advertising business, is that a lot of it is, the Uber Eats side of things. And the reason is because you have a competitive market with a lot of different advertisers for the same demand, pizza place, burger place, or groceries. That liquidity is important, and probably services. And the way he's using services, they're really more like experiences. You might have a much more competitive market than you do for the actual lodging itself, because lodging has so many specifics to it. There's not a lot of competition in a given neighborhood for a given number of bedrooms and things like that. Whereas if you're going to Paris and you want to book a tour, there might be 10, 15 identical companies looking to grab that dollar. And that's where you might have a much better advertising competitive situation.
Brian, meet Ari. He's available.
I'm available.
We're going to move on. I do want to jump
Jenny,
in. I think you mentioned Uber. Maybe we're still talking about Airbnb, but I do think that as you have Uber rides, Uber Eats, Uber services, etc. And full disclosure, we work with Uber, but the amount of information that those companies know about you, good or bad, is, I think, going to be incredible as they continue to scale, like an Airbnb, and in a privacy compliant way. But even like an Instacart, the data shows that, if you eat a certain kind of foods, you might have a certain disease. So think about how that affects data for pharmaceutical companies. So the amount of first-party data that we have, as long as we treat it well, can actually help advertisers in ways that are just you'd think that like someone that eats particular things has a disease and wants a certain drug, like that all makes sense. And I think it just continues to scale, not just like with Uber putting in-car advertising, but basically I'm not saying they use their data this way. I'm just saying that it's going to be a bank of first-party data that's going to help advertisers. And if Airbnb scales like that, just imagine they're going to know exactly what people want when they go where they go.
That's a great point. And I would imagine that buying this type of services makes you more apt to buy this type of thing. It opens up, a whole larger market than just travel and vacations. That's a great point. I gotta say, so past couple of weeks, we've been beating up on Google a little bit with respect to some of the AI experience in and around the Google workspace. And boy, did we just get a right hook with Google I/O. So, where do we begin? Have you experimented, either of you, with AI mode yet?
No, I haven't.
I have
saw
not.
the videos.
I will right after this.
Yeah. So go to I think it's only available on your personal account. So it's available for Google Workspace. Go to your personal account, google.com/AI mode. And it's Google, but you interact with it somewhat like you interact with an LLM. So you can type in a keyword, but you're really typing a question. And it's a neat experience. It's a bit jarring because it's brand new. And I personally am not used to the interface. But it's showing where Google, I think, is going to take this whole thing with respect to AI-based search, and ads are going to be coming to it. So it's a pretty neat thought experiment to think about how they can start to monetize questions.
Yeah, I think that this is impressive. It's great to see Google, trying to overcome the strategy tax that they have. It's going to be a little bumpy. It's still bumpy. And it's good to see them moving. I think the thing that impressed me the most was the generative AI videos that seem quite good and also much faster to generate than some of the state of the art right now. So that's exciting. And the other thing that people are chattering about is that the Chrome integration, which people are kind of wondering whether Google is sort of poking the eye of the judge in their antitrust case by showing how much power Chrome has, and whether that was maybe a mistake to do that.
Hard agree on those 2 points. If you go on X, people are going wild already with it's called VO3. Somebody pointed this out, which I thought made a lot of sense. Well, if you can have YouTube as your training data, you could probably do some pretty awesome things with generative AI when it comes to video. Makes sense. 2 other things I thought were interesting. One of which is maybe ads adjacent. So the first is real quickly for Google Meets, the real-time translation. So you could have a Google Meet with someone speaking a language you don't speak, and it's like seamless in terms of it being kind of reported back in the native language. I thought that was really cool. And then a little bit more adjacent to advertising. So they've got this thing called Project Mariner, which is their version of computer mode. So it's an agent that can carry out tasks on the web autonomously for users. So find me a hotel in Paris type of thing. I don't know if it's now going to go to book me a hotel and Google Travel gets a cut, affiliate model like, but you can imagine that being, an outcome at some point.
Yeah, the constant demos of book me a restaurant, book me a hotel are a little tiresome because the number of actual restaurants or actual hotels that have been booked by AI is probably countable on one hand, right? And I feel like the tech companies need to stop thinking so aggressively about the use cases of like 23-year-olds in San Francisco, and you have some real world use cases that actual human beings will do.
That's a great point. Nikita Bear had a tweet this week that was something to the effect of, the percentage of people that like do things on their phone at night while drunk, or the percentage of people that like are just like, not necessarily, the Silicon Valley type in terms of like where they live, what they do, and their age. You probably now have 40% of your TAM right there. So he said it far better than I did.
One of the secrets of the app install market is that, people only install apps like basically in the evening when they're sitting in their house, or while they're, in a couple of like scenarios during the day at work. No one's installing apps. On, people exercising, you're not installing apps. So even though the ads appear 24/7 to people all around the world, the actual windows of app installs are much narrower.
Right. And if you don't close them, then it still looks like you're using them.
Yeah, that too.
Let's talk about fraud.
Good point. And then there was something even bigger. So I.O., OpenAI's acquisition of Jony Ive's startup. Did you see the 9-minute video love letter to San Francisco?
I didn't watch it. I saw little snippets of it. I just I figured someone else would tell me about it. Maybe that's what's about to happen.
I didn't see it either, but I will say that snapping him up is somebody else should have snapped him up
for $6 billion.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. So first thing, how am I the one that's like watching all these videos and seeing all these things?
Because you're a VC. You have a lot of free time, man.
Fine. Okay. It's part of the job. So it is a 9-minute-ish video that is a love letter to San Francisco and talking about the two of their vision. It's so beautiful and well done that there's a rumor that it's actually AI.
Sure.
Like these images of them walking down the street and talking to each other might be AI, or it's just sheer beauty. I would watch the video. It's very inspiring. Makes you want to go to San Francisco. Now, what are they doing? So they acquired Jony Ive's startup for $6.5 billion in stock in OpenAI. So you've got the upside there. And according to employees of OpenAI, Sam Altman thinks that this $6.5 billion bet could add $1 trillion of value to their company.
Sure.
So what an L not keeping him at Apple and just giving him a ridiculous pay package, to Jenny's point.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And Sam Altman was an investor in this company he acquired. So I want to give my teenage son who's back from college his cynical take, because if people think that genetics don't follow, I just said to him, hey, do you hear the news about this whole thing? And he said, yeah, obviously Sam Altman is trying to increase his share of the ownership of OpenAI so he could take over and make it private. And I was like, wow, that is a fast hot take from my teenage son who's just chilling out on the couch. I have a different hot take. I think these two pieces of data, the Google I/O astounding AI demo and OpenAI's purchase of this hardware company, are both threads in the overall conversation about Apple's empire crumbling. And the thing I've always said and thought about Jony Ive's efforts here is that, someone needs to create a device that's significantly better than an iPhone in order to break that monopoly. And, the old thing, it has to be 10x better. And that seems impossible, right? iPhones are really good. I love my iPhone. But you can start to see this as a possibility with these amazing advances and how far back Apple is. I mean, Apple just doesn't have any functional AI on their devices, basically. And an Android device or a new device that has AI at its core and looks very different from what we're used to and just does things faster and better, seems like the future. And it's a question of who gets there and how fast they get there.
I'll pull a couple quotes from a journal piece, and then Jenny, maybe we can get your reaction. So what are they doing? They are bringing devices, starting with one device to market next year, according to Sam Altman. So it is an AI device. It is not a phone. It is not glasses. It will be pocket-sized, screen-free, and contextually aware. It will be capable of being fully aware of a user's surroundings and life, will be unobtrusive, able to rest in one's pocket or on one's desk, and will be a third core device a person would put on a desk after a MacBook Pro and an iPhone. That was so intentional. Altman's intent is to help wean users from screens. Altman said that the device isn't a pair of glasses and that I've been skeptical about building something to wear on the body. So there's so many clues here, but actually no clues at all. But it's a third device. Jenny, what you got?
Well, let me just say, it sounds like a Motorola beeper. All right, now, Jenny, please.
This feels actually like me to let's go back to her. But I do feel like it's sort of a play into how do I actually get into potential screens or whatever the next screen is in the future. So yes, let's integrate ourselves into our daily lives that exist today. Let's show how much better it can be. And then let's figure out how do we scale that and learn as to what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Because from an AI perspective, integrating that into it from the get-go, I think they're going to learn a hell of a lot. They're going to scale really fast with Jony. And I just would say that if I had $6.6 billion, I would have teamed with Johnny. So I'm going to do a big bet on that. And I'm going to bet that I think this is a little bit of a smokescreen as to we're going to develop a device that actually is going to take over all the other devices within 5 years.
I don't see how you can have a good experience without some visual and audio aspect. And they're not going to build glasses, headphones, screens, etc. So it seems to me like this is going to be some sort of dongle that then projects things onto your other screens when needed. Like maybe you talk to it and then it's like, hey, check out your phone for an image. And there's an app on your phone that then uses Bluetooth to talk to this thing. And the thing does its thing. That's my
Yeah, or maybe the device that we create in 5 years is going to be glasses, phone, and ear pods all in one. So like, I think it's, again, this sort of like dare to dream. Like, we don't know what something's going to look like. We may never have phones in 5 years.
I think it may be a concept of like, it's an operating system that disintermediates all your existing devices by being more intelligent, more personal. And then the other devices are the ways you actually interact with it when you want to.
Right. And it's going to be a brain chip in 10. So
no one's getting into my brain.
All right.
Unless you're in Severance.
Everything else on the docket seems quite insignificant compared to this. But what you got, Ari?
I gotta do a call out to my ad ops peeps who just really want me to talk about this, even though it's boring as shit. So Amazon had their Publisher Day. It was a private conversation. I think it was off the record, but everyone leaked it to me anyway. So there were two announcements out of the Amazon's Publisher Day. The first, and the one that really matters to ad ops people, is that the TAM is now inside pre-bid. So TAM, which it stands for
Transparent Ad Marketplace.
Thank you. TAM is Amazon's version of pre-bid. Essentially, it's a different tag you put on the page and you get your bids from all your demand sources. And it's always been separate. So you had pre-bid and TAM on the page, and then you had to manage the bids between them. That still exists, but also you can have TAM bid into pre-bid so that it can compare the best price of TAM with all the best prices from all the other sources. And there's still duplication, but it should simplify the ad op system and also get better pricing. So people on the publisher side are pretty psyched about that. And secondly, there was this announcement that Magnite is inside TAM. And I really don't understand this, despite a multi-thousand-word essay about it. But it seems really cool. And I think the headline here is that you can bid on Amazon Fire inventory through Magnite, which seems like a big deal. But it wasn't clear if that was Amazon inventory on Amazon Fire or if it was third-party apps on Amazon Fire, which already were available. So if someone wants to create like a big flow chart on this Magnite announcement and post it, that would be great because it was like really complicated.
Well, as a marketer, I'm just going to say that TAM is a horrible thing because it does mean total addressable market to most people in advertising. So let's just... There's too many acronyms. Too many acronyms.
Yeah, and it's also
acronyms.
Own them. Yeah, like the plus sign right on all the SVOD services.
Also, I'll just do a shout out that there is another antitrust case against Google that a lot of people don't know about, which is Rumble, the kind of right wing YouTube. And they have a couple of cases, but their bigger case was about Google favoring YouTube videos over videos on other sites. I personally read this complaint and thought it was pretty compelling, and a judge tossed it out. So it's no longer a case. Google won. It was totally dismissed. It was dismissed for a lot of technical reasons. They took too long to file it. They didn't have certain arguments, but it doesn't matter. It was tossed out. It's over. Google has an actual win on the antitrust side, although it's a case that very few people knew existed.
All right. Google, book the W. This has been super fun. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ari and Eric. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a great episode. I learned a lot. It was a lot of, wow, there's a lot of news. We have, I give us another year before AI replaces this podcast. We'll see.
And Eric, I'm calling you every day, so you can just give me a quick download on what I need to know.
You got it. Anytime. Only you. Nobody else. All right. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture Podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.